I could still hear his voice echoing through my mind, resonant and cold like a death knell. "You're no longer our daughter." My father, once my pillar of strength, now stood before me, eyes filled with scorn and contempt. It was a moment I had rehearsed in my head countless times, yet nothing prepared me for the raw agony of his betrayal. I was 20 years old, just beginning to understand who I was in a world that often felt unwelcoming. Coming out as a queer woman had felt like stepping off a precipice into uncharted territory, terrifying yet exhilarating. All I had ever wanted was a sense of belonging, a shared love with my parents who had raised me in a strict, conservative household steeped in dogma and judgment. The confrontation unfolded in our living room, which had once been a sanctuary filled with laughter and love. Now it felt less like home and more like a prison. I stood before my father, trembling as I revealed my truth, hoping for understanding, acceptance, even love. Instead, I was met with harsh words and an ultimatum: choose my identity or lose my family. This was the first domino in my parents' grand design to disown me. They took everything I held dear: their love, their pride, my childhood home, and the sense of security that came with being their daughter. I was suddenly cast adrift, longing for acceptance but finding only rejection. Days morphed into weeks, and then into months, as I struggled to find my footing in a world that felt wholly unwelcoming. My mother, once my confidant, clung to her husband's side, believing their image was more vital than their child's well-being. With each passing day, it felt more invisible, like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. I packed my things and left their house, but the pain of abandonment settled like an anchor in my chest. I moved out of state to forge my own path in a city that felt foreign yet liberating. In the bustling streets, I sought connection and understanding, engulfed by an overwhelming desire to reclaim my essence. During these years of solitude and growth, I discovered a chosen family, friends who embraced me for who I truly was. My life began to blossom in ways I hadn't imagined, but within me simmered an insatiable fury at the two people who had once shaped my life. I was alive but felt dead inside, and their rejection transformed into a cold determination. I would rise from the ashes they had left me in. I would become someone not defined by their disdain, but empowered by my own identity. Revenge would soon come for them, but it would not come in the way one might expect. Life moved on, but the specter of my past hovered relentlessly, making me question my worth. Still, I kept fighting. Then 2 weeks ago, everything changed. A letter arrived from a law firm. It was something I never expected: a chilling proclamation that my parents had declared me dead. The moment I opened that envelope, a jarring mix of disbelief and fury coursed through my veins. Not content with merely disowning me, they had taken it a step further, orchestrating a funeral to sever every remaining tie. It became painfully evident that my absence was a tool for them to cleanse their image, casting me away as if I were a faded photograph, a reflection of something they no longer wished to acknowledge. What had compelled them to take such drastic measures? Perhaps this was nothing more than an attempt to salvage their reputations within the community, showcasing a lifeless daughter rather than facing the truth of my existence. The betrayal stung even more deeply now. I had not only lost my parents but my very identity, the essence of who I was. And dreading the thought of them committing such an act, without me being there, was enough to stir my heart into rebellion. The funeral was set for the following week at the church where I had grown up, my childhood home, the place where I should have felt safe, a sanctuary that had now become my prison. The idea of standing there, silently bearing witness to my own erasure, filled me with a terrifying sense of resolve. I found solace in planning my return. This was my opportunity to not only confront my parents, but to reclaim my identity in front of their intended audience. The flames of vengeance ignited within me. Little did they know that I was not dead. I had risen from the ashes they tried to bury me in. The days leading up to the funeral were a surreal blur. I rented an outfit that screamed both elegance and defiance. An elegant black dress with a bold splash of color at the hem, a testament to the vibrant life I had cultivated outside of their judgment. I wanted to convey strength, a triumphant spirit, and solidarity with the parts of me they had tried to erase. I practiced for days, honing my speech, rehearsing my lines in the mirror, focusing on the justice I wanted to deliver. The day of my funeral arrived, cloaked in a somber shadow that felt all too familiar, even as I prepared to crash their charade. I arrived at the church, my heart racing. As I stood outside, the memories flooded back. The laughter, the hymns, the warmth of community during Sundays that felt unravaged by prejudice. But now, as I entered the building, what was once a sanctuary now felt like a stage, and I was about to deliver a performance that would shatter the silence they had forced across my life. As the doors creaked open, I felt the weight of over 100 eyes turn toward me, gasps spilling into the air like a haunting chorus. My father stood at the front, his mouth agape, his eyes wide in disbelief. A myriad of emotions flickered across his face: confusion, horror, and finally recognition. My mother, perched beside him, clutched her pearls tightly, her face drained of color. The congregation, a sea of familiar faces from my childhood, sat frozen in shock, struggling to comprehend the sight before them. This wasn't a vision of their dead daughter. This was a daughter who had risen from the ashes, adorned with a smile that betrayed the tumult of emotions surging within. In that moment, I felt the full weight of their judgment bearing down upon me. But I relished it. This was my time. This was my sanctuary now, and I was reclaiming it. I took a deep breath and walked forward, taking a place at the altar they had once used to condemn me. The silence felt electric, and I embraced it. I could feel a smile tugging at my lips. This was my moment. "Hello, everyone," I called out, my voice echoing through the hushed space. "I see you're here to mourn someone you've tried to forget. I'm Rachel Wright, a daughter you chose to disown. But I'm very much alive." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline, each word imbued with a mixture of vindication and anger that I could hardly contain. My father's eyes narrowed. They were filled with disbelief and fury wrapped in confusion. It was a satisfying sight, the very embodiment of the chaos they had wrought upon my life. I could sense my father's heart racing, each beat echoing the panic now swirling in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. The slight tremor in his words felt deliciously rewarding. I couldn't help myself. I took a poised step forward, channeling all the quiet rage birthed from years of suffering. "Oh, Dad," I said, forcing a syrupy sweetness into my words that dripped with mockery. "You declared me dead, remember? You set this stage, thinking you could wash me from your lives, erase me from existence as if I were a stain unable to be removed. But here I am, alive and unyielding." The gasps in the congregation were drowned out by the pounding of my heart. I was not just confronting my father. I was proclaiming a truth that shattered their illusion of righteousness. I turned to face the audience, allowing their views, some filled with empathy, others filled with confusion, to wash over me. These were people who had stood by my side, and now, I was here to take back what was mine. "You thought declaring me dead would cleanse your image?" I continued, no longer holding back. "You thought you could exorcise your shame simply by pretending I didn't exist? But here I stand, a testament to the strength you tried to deny me. I have fought tooth and nail to reclaim my identity. It is time to reckon with the choices that have brought us to this moment." Discomfort rippled through the church. Some parishioners shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged glances, their discomfort painfully visible. I realized each of these people contained their own stories of acceptance or rejection, and I had a chance to ignite a conversation that expanded beyond my personal grievances. "This is not just about me," I pressed on, my voice gaining momentum. "This is about every child cast aside for being different, every person who has felt the crushing weight of societal expectations. We live in a world where love is often conditional, but I am here to show you that love can be reborn in acceptance. I demand you reconsider the very teachings you hold dear, the ones that failed me." It was almost surreal, standing there boldly confronting my father, a man who had once embodied the doctrine I had been instructed to uphold. His rigid posture began to shift, a crack of uncertainty revealing itself, and for the first time in years, I felt a sliver of hope that perhaps I could penetrate the fortress of his conviction. And then, I caught her gaze, my childhood friend Ashley, softly nodding from the pews. She had been my anchor during the years of my absence, silently cheering me on, as I built my life outside the crushing constraint of their beliefs. In her eyes, I saw an ally, a reflection of resilience that mirrored my own. That connection propelled me further, a reminder of my purpose. "Mom, Dad," I said, crossing my arms as I locked eyes with them. "You've built your lives on the belief that your righteousness allows you to cast out anyone who doesn't conform to your ideals. But life isn't meant to be lived in the shadows of your expectations. It's about authenticity, embracing love in all its forms. I am not your failure. I am your daughter, alive and vibrant, thriving outside your approval. You put a period on my existence when there should have been a comma, an opportunity for growth instead of erasure." Gasps continued to contrast the stillness, but I could see glimmers of understanding flickering in some of the eyes around me. The tension initially born from disapproval began to morph into intrigue, or perhaps even curiosity about who I had become. Each word I spoke acted as a sealing bond, snapping away the chains of rejection. To finally address my parents' condemnation felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying, an amalgamation of emotions that whisked through me. Just then my father stood, his face flushed, a storm of anguish swirling behind his stony facade. I don't recognize you anymore," he stammered, his voice cracking under the strain. "This isn't the daughter I raised." "Perhaps not," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor behind the words. "But it is the woman I have become, a woman who refuses to let disdain dictate her worth. I have learned to love myself despite your rejection. I am free, and that terrifies you." Silence befell the church as the congregation tried to absorb my truth, a truth that might ignite more questions than answers. My father's rigid demeanor faltered, and I realized this was my moment to fully reclaim my identity. I felt a power surging, a gravitational pull toward what I knew was right. "Dad, you have taught me many things, both good and bad. But I stand here today, demanding truth and accountability. No longer will I cower under the weight of your disapproval, nor will I allow my story to be rewritten. I claim my life, my love, my existence, and I'll fight every day to ensure others like me feel seen, loved, and valued." As my voice rang true, I saw tears pooling in my mother's eyes, her composure slipping in the face of my unwavering strength. That transformation, that fragility in her convictions, satisfied a hunger within me I couldn't have anticipated. "I am not your shame. I am your daughter, and I am deserving of love." With every heart-wrenching word, I peeled away the layers of misunderstanding and prejudice, daring them to confront the truth of their choices. As I stepped back, a new light cascaded over the somber congregation, a light radiating the strength I had fought so hard to cultivate. I walked away from the altar, leaving my parents to wrestle with their demons and the reckoning of their choices. Though I didn't know how my parents would react in the days to come, I finally understood that my liberation was only just beginning. As I stepped out into the sunlight, forgiveness floated in my heart. No, not towards them, but towards myself for the years lost in their shame. I had arrived raw and unyielding, and for the first time, I felt truly alive.